Hey neighbor, welcome back to ARTV. My name is John and it's time for another episode of 7 on Sunday. This is of course another sequel because 7 on Sunday is now 7 years old and the first 7 episodes of the year are all sequels. And today I'm doing 7 bands that I outgrew part 3. If you haven't checked out part 1 or part 2 yet, there should be links in the description down below or else at the end of the video, cards on screen, all that good stuff. What this essentially boils down to, bands that I outgrew, it doesn't mean that I hate or have ill will necessarily against these bands. It's just that my preferences changed, or maybe I grew past the lyrical content, or the music just isn't scratching that itch for me at this point. And while I might still have respect for them, it's not always a fair game because we do grow as people and our tastes and our preferences evolve. Yeah, I think that covered all the bases. Think of it like this. It's like a breakup where you're still friends afterwards and you actually do stay true to that promise. Not one of those things where, oh yeah, we'll totally be friends and then blocks number immediately. No, if some of these songs or these artists come up on shuffle, I'm probably not gonna be that mad, especially if it's the stuff that I'm really inclined to. If you enjoy what you see today, then please do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, buckle up, and let's get going. Nabbing the uncoveted number 7 position are the English rockers You Me at 6, a band that I definitely have a respect for. I say the uncoveted position because I doubt any band would want to see themselves appearing on a list like this, but I have a respect for the craft that You Me at 6 do put out into the world. I enjoyed their album 6 that came out in 2018. That was kind of the last material, the last hurrah for me, where I feel like, yes, there are some songs there that I can fully enjoy. In fact, the album was surprisingly good. But for the most part, that connection isn't there. So rewind for just a second. 2011 is the year that I got into them. I found Bite My Tongue because it featured Ollie Sykes from one of my favorite bands at that time, Bring Me the Horizon. And what do you know? I fell in love with that album and I was obsessed with this band. And then Cavalier Youth came out in 2014 and I felt gutted and very torn because while I loved some of the tracks like Room to Breathe, overall, the album wasn't doing much for me, and I felt similar ways about Night People in 2017. The album went down rough, didn't leave much of an impression, and when it did leave an impression, it was kind of a bad one. Do I still get any sensation of joy when I go back to some of their early works like Hold Me Down or Take Off Your Colors or even Sinners Never Sleep? The answer is yes, absolutely. But do I seek out this material? No. That's where we're not exactly on the same page, and they've been very back and forth. Number 6, Wolfmother. This is a band that have been kinda controversial from the start. They were always considered Led Zeppelin ripoffs, but when I found them in 2006, I didn't really know that much about Led Zeppelin, and I didn't even think to make the comparison between obviously Robert Plant from Led and then Andrew Stockdale from Wolfmother. That was one of the first records that I ever purchased with my own money, the self-titled album. That and AFI's December Underground. I remember walking into Circuit City and purchasing those. So yes, I was definitely a fan, and that debut album remains solid. Even some of the tracks from Cosmic Egg and a few others that came out later like Victorious are fine, but the more I evolved, I guess, my own taste and opened the door to older acts like Led Zeppelin or even the White Stripes or a lot of these other bands that I just really feel like Andrew is extremely influenced by, the more I started to shut out Wolfmother. But as I listen to some of these other albums like New Crown, I hear so many issues in the production and just the way that these songs kind of circle the drain. They don't pump new life into things, and I guess it's cool and all that you've got your retro 60s and 70s influences, but have I seen it evolve to the point where I could feel invested and interested again? No, and that includes that late 2019 project. Christian rock band Red presented number 5. This is a group that I got into a little bit late. Their debut album End of Silence came out in 2006, and as a Christian rock band, a Christian school kid myself, yes, the fit was natural. Now, it was 2009 when I discovered the track Already Over and Breathe Into Me, and my little mind was blown. Those are still solid mainstream rock songs that do have an endearing message to them. They definitely grapple at something that I can understand why people attach themselves to the band, but I feel that they've repeated themselves a lot, and when they're not repeating themselves, they're really not that interesting because they think out of the box in kind of the wrong way. Naturally, yes, I'm referring to Gone, that released in 2017, because that was a more experimental and electronic and subdued album that I just don't feel suited their vocalist Michael Barnes all that well. He has a great voice, and he really presents that pretty well over some of these records, like obviously End of Silence is a big one, A Beauty and Rage was another one with tracks like Falling Sky. I'm always open to being won back over, and their new record Declaration is dropping in 2020, but based on the single Sever and other material that I've heard from them in recent years, I just don't see myself rushing out to gush over them. Number 4, Hailstorm. This might be one of the more alarming picks, shall we say, because I've talked pretty positively about them, and I do still like Hailstorm and what they do, their presence, their stamp on the heavier and even metal communities in music. But at large, I looked back through their discography and listened through most of their albums in full, and nothing was really jumping out to me outside of the songs that I knew that I already loved. I think a lot of their albums have a habit of being filler and containing a lot of songs that don't move the dial one way or the other. Are Lzzy Hale and the rest of her bandmates incredibly talented? Yes, duh, let's not ask dumb questions. But again, I always point back to this, I feel like, but talent doesn't always equal good final product. I can go back to some of the records like The Strange Case Of, and I loved that in 2012. One of my favorite records of that year, according to my 2012 countdown. But my records now are not showing that on the radar at all. Hailstorm's 2018 album Vicious might have been better than Into the Wild that released in 2015. It just felt like that was a very stagnant release outside of a few songs that got me a little bit excited, but it's hard for me to fully invest in the band when the lyrics are often kind of crappy, and I often see through exactly where the song is going, how it's progressing. I love when they strike me down with a lightning bolt live wire guitar and some of those hammering drums, and obviously Lizzy's iconic voice. But beyond those great features, the songs just aren't always there for me. I will throw in that they're a great live band though, so I recommend them in that setting, and again, it could be just kind of a singles thing, and they do play a lot of the singles live, so maybe that's why it works. I'm really feeling tormented here at number 3, but Sleigh Bells are popping up on this list, and I'm extremely internally conflicted here. It's like brain cannot compute in some ways because I love so many of their songs, but in the past 5 years, if I'm being honest with myself, I do not listen to them nearly as much as I did back in, say, 2012, 2013, 2014. A lot of you might not be familiar with the band Sleigh Bells, and I do encourage you to give them a chance. I want you to push your sonic horizons, and they're a noise pop duo consisting of Derek Miller. He was in a couple of heavier bands back in the day, and then you have Alexis Krauss, and they kind of mix together these bright, sunshiny melodies with heavier guitars and sometimes nonsensical lyrics. And for what it's worth, I think it works really well when they're firing on all cylinders. That would be like their debut album Treats, for example, and even some of the tracks from Reign of Terror, an album that completely grew on me. Better Rivals is still very solid, but after that point, that released in 2013, I just feel that Jessica Rabbit and their other mini LP, they didn't do much of anything. It felt like they were just kind of circling the drain and kind of wearing thin on the whole routine of, hey, we've got this noise and we've also got these pop melodies and guitar too, and I grew very bored of it. After going back to play through all of their albums once again, I found myself saying one thing: I have to be in the mood for this. Better Rivals is probably my favorite out of the pack. I think Treats I really have to be in the mood for at this point because it's so sugary sweet. And then if I want something a little bit heavier and Unleash, sure, I can go to Reign of Terror. But past that, there's not much outside of a couple of songs that I would probably ever come back to again. Number 2, Sleeping with Sirens, a post-hardcore, emo, pop, rock, and other things band that have become America's favorite punching bag in a lot of ways, but it's kind of an on and off relationship where I feel that people are just on the gas pedal or they're off when it comes to hating or disliking them. Do I hate Sleeping with Sirens? No. Do I hate some of the material that they've made? Absolutely. I mean, Congratulations with Maddie Mullins exists, and so do some of the other really bad songs from Gossip that came out on Warner Brothers Records in 2018, and I'm still not sure why that was ever a thing. Kellen Quinn's voice is a very complicated issue for me because I do like it in some regards if the instrumentation fits it. Yes, it's a little nasally, yes, it's a little whiny, but it works for albums like Let's Cheers to This. That's all well and good, but to reach a final verdict on this, I really felt like I needed to explore their most recent album at the time of recording this video, How It Feels to Be Lost. I had so many requests from my viewers to cover this album, and I don't know why. It's genuinely nothing special, and I always wanted to avoid it because, get this, I felt like I had outgrown the band, and what do you know, I was right. Cool, Sleeping with Sirens have breakdowns and are heavier again. That's just what I wanted for Christmas, and I got it, I guess. And now that I have it, it's gonna sit in a corner collecting dust somewhere. Hate to do it to them, but at number 1, we have the rock band Shinedown. They've scored so many mainstream rock hits over the years, and I think redundancy is a big thing that gets on my nerves in terms of this group. There's songs that I absolutely love. I've done a top 10 countdown for them that I absolutely stand by. But outside of this narrow stairs selection of songs that I love, there isn't much to Shinedown beyond the talented vocals, the maybe at times competent production, and some big guitar moments here and there. Most of it's pretty by-the-numbers standard mainstream radio rock. I will always treasure songs like Save Me and The Crow and the Butterfly that are so elegant, well-spoken, well-played, and well-composed overall with great vocal performances. Brent Smith is hella talented, but the songwriting, the overproduction, the cliches that they rely on and kind of prop themselves up on in other places make it feel way too washed out for my liking. And Shinedown, a band that I once considered one of my favorites of all time in the mid to late 2000s, have kind of become a distant stranger outside of those random moments where they'll pop up on shuffle. Hopefully you guys understand where I'm coming from on these picks and I did a decent job of explaining myself. Let me know your thoughts on my list of the bands that I outgrew part 3 in the comments section down below. Again, if you haven't seen part 1 or part 2, I highly recommend doing so. There is a link on screen right now for those episodes. If you want more SOS content, there's a link for the playlist in the description. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you soon for more right here on ARTV.